Jury deliberations are resuming in the trial of former East Point, Georgia police officer who has been accused of using his power to sexually assault 3 women and 2 teenage girls over a 7-year period. His name is Richard Gooddine. Richard Gooddine is 41, faces nearly 20 charges, including child molestation, aggravated assault, aggravated sexual battery, sexual assault by a law enforcement officer, and violating his oath of office. He's accused of molesting 2 girls younger than 16 and inappropriately touching 3 other women during the arrest. Now, put up his picture again. I checked his record. This guy has a long history of complaints that IA, Internal Affairs, actually dismissed. You know, if we had a law, I don't know, maybe the George Floyd Policing and Accountability Act, which codified in that federal statute, would say every one of those complaints would have been reported to a nationwide database so we can look at it. We can have access to it. We would have been aware of his background. Cops are aware of yours. Why can't we be aware of theirs? He was cleared of all of these misconduct charges against him. People told on him for years. The earliest allegations stem from 2011 and involved a 14-year-old child who, according to Gooddine, was mentoring. According to testimony by the victim and her father, the final allegation was lodged on August 2018 when a 15-year-old accused the officer of sexually assaulting her in an East Point neighborhood after separating her from her friends during a night out. Put up his mug shot. None of these children knew each other. They did not coordinate their stories. None of the women knew each other. They did not coordinate their stories. Surveillance footage from the Wellstar Atlanta Medical Center South showed Gooddine arriving at the hospital around 4 a.m. as the teen underwent a forensic exam. He was told to leave the hospital 7 minutes later after security informed him that he was being accused of assaulting the girl, according to evidence presented at trial. An internal investigation into the case led Gooddine being fired from the department and later charged. His former supervisors testified 3 formal complaints were lodged against Gooddine over the years, but he was cleared during each internal affairs investigation. Here's what the former chief said. When you keep getting the same kind of allegations, even if you don't have the facts, you still get this person out of the department. I've been in law enforcement for 33 years. Not one time did I have a complaint that I have fondled someone inappropriately. In Wednesday's closing arguments, Deputy DA Yolanda Mack argued that none of the victims knew each other, yet all 5 women shared similar stories of being violated by the same officer. Now, we have covered so many of these damn stories on Indisputable. Cop after cop being a predator to those who are vulnerable, to those who are young. As I said before, you have to ask the question, is the culture of policing shaping this, or is it attracting it? It's one or the other, because this is happening too damn much. And yes, that former chief is correct. All of these allegations, even though they all got dismissed, it's the same allegation over and over again. And he was still allowed to permeate that chaos inside of that local department. Systemic, not isolated, a culture issue, because policy is right. Policy says that's a no-no, but the culture says we can look the other way. Farron, thoughts on this?
I think a lot of it does have to do with this is the kind of position, the kind of job that attracts these kinds of individuals. And of course, once you end up with a department filled with people like this, it does change the culture. So, kind of a chicken and egg kind of thing. But I think it's because it attracts these people who want the power to be able to exert that power, that authority to whatever devious means they have in mind. 7 years these kinds of things were going on. And every time the cops themselves, internal affairs looks at it and say, no, we're good. And the original one where you had these two young girls who said, yes, he did this to us. They came back and they said, well, your stories aren't exactly, the same. There's a couple discrepancies here, so we're gonna just let it go. And that goes back to the big thing. Cops can't investigate cops. They can't. We have seen it far too many times. They will let their own off the hook more often than not. It's their friends, it's their buddies. These are the guys we hang out with on the weekend. We go to barbecues. We were just out on the boat last Saturday. You're not gonna put your good buddy behind bars with all these other people we've arrested. And that's the problem. They have their own biases with one another. We're gonna protect our own. It's the brotherhood of being a cop. And you have to get outside of that if you want to have real accountability for these individuals. And so far, we don't have that. And as long as we don't have it, we continue to see more and more of these stories emerge.
You make great points, and I will say this. The only department in any city or county government that's allowed to investigate themselves for criminal activity is the police. Watershed management, they can't do it. The city fire department, they can't do it. City sanitation, they can't investigate themselves. The police are the only agency allowed to investigate themselves when there is criminal misconduct alleged. It's insanity.